Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on whichever part of the world you are in. I mean, we have a very interesting panel today on banking and metaverse. While it is a metaverse conversation, I promise you the three people on the call are real. We actually have we have a very interesting, in fact, Rajesh Mirjankar, who's obviously he's the MD and CEO of Kiya.ai. He's signing in, from Guernsey. Did you say, Rajesh? Where are you right now?
Jersey, in the Channel Islands.
Jersey. Okay. So it's 4:30 for him in the morning, and you could see he's as fresh as it can be. Venkataraman, Venki, MD of ANZ, he's signing in from India, and I'm Ramkumar, the moderator for this panel. I work for Cedar. I'm a senior partner. So this webinar today is actually being hosted by IBS Intelligence and brought to you by Kiya.ai. And the topic obviously is, as wide as it can get, banking and metaverse. We have three questions to answer: what, why, and then how. We're not jumping into the how before we understand what and why. So we will obviously, I'll probably do a quick introduction of the panelists, but before I did that, just to let the audience know what's the structure and design of the discussion today. We would have a short presentation by Rajesh on metaverse. As many of you in this call may know, Kiya.ai and Rajesh have been working on this, for a while. And as I always see Rajesh as a futuristic leader, technology leader, and has actually been very actively working. And I think, if I'm not wrong, he's already in conversations with 19 banks, if I got that number right, Rajesh. And we will obviously then jump into a panel discussion. I have a lot of questions to ask both our gentlemen on the call today, along with all of you in the audience. So, feel free to pose your questions also to us. There is a small button you see on your screen where Q&A, where you can pose the questions, and I'll do my best to have them also shared with the panelists here. But if you are in the audience, you can't get away by just listening. You will also have a role to play, where we will have you to share with us your thoughts by way of some polls that we will be peppering this whole panel with. So stay tuned and stay alive and stay kicking. Now, before I jump into the presentation, I think a proper introduction is in order. We have with us SV Venkataraman, Venki, Managing Director, ANZ. He obviously runs the Global In-House Center. He is based in Bangalore, managing about 9,500 plus people. He heads the operations and technology function, and what I really admire about Venki is his passion for driving both innovation and transformation agenda. That's interesting because one is about changing and one is about running. So there is an innovation agenda and a transformation agenda. He was the chief operating officer earlier, and more importantly, Venki comes with many years of experience on the other side of the table. He was also working for many technology firms, he's including TCS and payroll systems and PSA data, which was his last role, avatar before ANZ. We got to use the right terminology in this call today. My other fellow panelist in today is Rajesh Mirjankar. Rajesh is the managing director and CEO at Kiya.ai. Kiya wo batayega. He will share with us what he has done. But I guess, what is going to be very interesting is every time I actually get to meet Rajesh, every time, he presents about something innovative, it's always a very steep learning curve, for someone like me. And I'm sure, people in the audience today are going to enjoy that as well. With that introduction, and also, if I may, quickly introduce myself, I am a senior partner with Cedar. Cedar and IBSI, as you know, specializing in the space of financial services and research in financial technology, which is brought by IBS Intelligence, a UK-based group entity of Cedar. And this webinar is being hosted by IBS Intelligence. Rajesh, I would leave the floor to you. I know you have a presentation to make, and then we will circle back after that. But before you actually showed the presentation, Rajesh, I don't want the audience to go scot-free. So I'm going to have a small poll for them to also set the tone on what they have to say. I'm going to also ask the panelists to vote, by the way, dear audience. So they have not seen the question as well. So here is my first question for everyone. And the question goes as this: what could be the most interesting service that banks could offer customers in the metaverse? Is it the avatar or virtual humanoid based interactions? Is it the whole gamification and data visualization? Or is it about integration with what is the flavor of the month now, the digital currencies and open finance and integration of that with metaverse? Unfortunately, or fortunately, we don't have all of the above as a choice. And I know that's a choice many would like to actually adopt. So you will have to choose what you think is the most interesting. Everything is interesting, but what, in your view, is the most interesting one? So we have about 53%, 55, 59, 61, 63. The numbers are going up, percentage of people participating. I'll give it another 20 seconds. And I guess, Rajesh, you will have to actually take up whatever is the poll answer as part of your presentation and make sure that you have that articulated in your presentation. So I'm closing the poll now and I'm launching the results. Interesting. There's a overwhelming majority that actually talks about integrating with digital currencies and open finance as the most interesting service that banks could offer customers in the metaverse. So with that interesting perspective that comes from our audience, I leave the floor to you, Rajesh.
Very well. I think I'll have Venki have a say on this as well, but I think it's a very apt sort of conclusion on the poll that at the end of the day, if we look at metaverse as the future of web, it has to be about enabling open finance. It has to be about enabling digital currencies, given that that's a purest way of running a Web 3.0 environment, as the purist would want. But I think from a perspective of what the metaverse has to achieve, it's a balance between the look and feel, because that's the whole difference between Web3 and metaverse. That metaverse is all about data visualization and gamification of process per se. And given that, the whole immersive experience is an important element of the metaverse. But yeah, I get it. I think if that is the part that it shows as visualization, the end goal achievement is eventually going to be open finance. So yeah, I absolutely agree with the results of the poll.
Thank you, Rajesh. So maybe I'll have you to present to us what you have to say as an overview on metaverse and your perspective, and then we will jump into the panel.
Very well. I'll just share a brief presentation of our product. Are we able to see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very well. So we see the metaverse is the new frontier in digitization of banking, but I think it also goes beyond banking in that way, in terms of sort of unifying the various industries with banking as a service. To give you a quick company overview, Kiya.ai is business. We are a financial solutions provider, and what we have is a artificial intelligence based omni-channel and open finance solution, which provides for mobile banking, internet banking, but largely the focus is omni-channel, and in those ways somewhere the metaverse does come out as one of the channels that can be available to consumers of banks. But importantly, the metaverse then extends itself into multiple industries in terms of unifying open finance, which is why we see that as a separate platform in itself. Difference being that omni-channel is not a persistent world, but whereas metaverse is a persistent world which provides for an immersive experience. We also provide digital core banking solutions in across 300 banks. Universal RegTech Solutions has turned out to be one of the flagship products of the company, where we have market leadership In fact, I should say at this point, we are number one on the IPS Global Sales League for the last 3 years, and I think number one in India, especially for the last 5 years on RegTech solutions, especially AML. And we've also focused on the other aspects, which are the tax reg, as the RegTech world has evolved within banking. So it is to make sure that aspects such as FATCA, CRS reporting, BEPS, enabling GDPR compliance, and so on and so forth, including beneficial ownership, etc. Solutions for those are in place. And very recently, we launched our ESG reporting solution, which isn't shown on the slide, but that's something that we are launching early Jan. We are already making an outreach to various pilot clients in our global markets. We also have capability around digital engineering and analytics, where we've provided bespoke solutions to banks around integration of platforms at their end. And importantly, today's subject, we provide a metaverse and an AR/VR solution, completely looking at the whole aspect of extended reality, enabling edge computing using devices such as VR headsets, etc. Importantly, providing for digital assets, virtual humanoid-based chats with the relationship managers, and social networking, so to say, 3D visualization of various products, and typically looking at integration of CBDC. I don't use the word crypto here because that's not something that applies globally, but we can certainly use the word tokens, because if it's a closed loop sort of a exchange using blockchain technology, that is something we are looking at. And then the NFT based transactions, again, those that are typically closed loop, unless and until those need to be interoperable between metaverses or other meta spaces, and being able to render a experience, immersive experience rather. Quick overview: we have over 550 customers globally, 275 universal RegTech solutions across 48 countries. Core banking solutions, like I said, over 300. We have clients in about 58 countries today, and we provided digital banking and omni-channel implementations at about 125 plus banks. Importantly, we made a step into the cloud pretty much, I think, a decade ago, but we've really moved on to being cloud native in terms of our product architecture. And that's about 200 plus customers now today serviced on the cloud. We have a global presence, over 1,700 employees, 1,700 employees globally. Large chunk of that would be in India. We have 3 centers in India, Mumbai, 2 centers in Mumbai, Pune and Chennai, and offices globally as well, as they are shown here. So in a nutshell, Kiya.ai is today looking to be one of the representatives of taking India's products globally, and the so-called concept of Make in India is truly coming through across 58 countries that we service today. So today's subject, Kiyaverse. I'll give you a quick overview of what Kiyaverse is about. Kiyaverse is Kiya.ai's metaverse platform, and some of the features of this platform are that it provides for omni-channel capability, which means that our metaverse can be viewed from VR headsets, AR headsets, mobile phones, laptops, desktops, as well as digital banking units. So the whole concept of taking metaverse real is what we've looked at with the omni-channel capability. Importantly, what we look at as the objective of our metaverse platform is providing banking as a service. Because of our core focus on financial services industry, I've always wondered, as we rendered metaverse experience to other industries, of saying what is it that eventually our vision is, and it's clearly to provide banking as a service across the plethora of industries that would be a part of the future of web, so to say. The core aspect of metaverse is being able to provide digital assets and NFTs. So that is something that we have clearly within Kiyaverse platform. From a aspect of digital, from a perspective of digital assets, we provide for the capabilities of a digital wallet where customers are able to store these assets, be it whether it's virtual goods that are purchased, whether it is assets that we create for the corporate entity or the consumer, and as well as putting in a concept of NFTs, which are not necessarily tradable. So you have two aspects of NFTs. One that can be sort of moved across metaverses and for actions. Like, for example, proof of work or proof of stake, etc. But the other aspect is about providing for instruments that can be controlled by the bank. And I use the word control responsibly, because we talk about Web 3.0 and people would say, what is the control over NFT? It's important to say that, you know, there are financial instruments that banks still need to manage for workflow process. And that is something that our unique patented NFTs are able to provide. We also provide for trade finance and enabling marketplace. Marketplace could be multiple in those ways. One is being able to provide visualization to other marketplaces. We are also looking at, let's say, a unique way of, let's say, putting up ONDC for that matter on Kiya.ai and being able to render a buyer-seller experience in the metaverse. Then is the aspect of learning and OD. This has been one of the, I would say, primary use cases that most banks and firms have looked at adopting metaverse for. Since it is more of a closed user group testing in terms of the experience of metaverse per se, the capabilities of the bank to render it, and the ability for, I would think, the internal teams within banks to be able to understand what the metaverse's potential is. Then is the important aspect of group meetings and social networking, where we are able to have the ability to have meetings between groups, and these could be between the signatories of a corporate account, or it could be then looking at providing purely a social networking between consumers or entities of who log into our metaverse and being able to conduct interactions. We also provide for natural language processing, biometrics, and gesture processing. And this is an important element given the aspect that the metaverse is eventually going to be omni-channel, and hence the ability to communicate through the metaverse has to be across the board, being able to adopt multiple languages and manage aspects such as a challenge response authentication like the biometrics, and being able to have the whole aspect of, I would think, capabilities for the specially abled, being able to also look at gesture processing where necessary. Of course, what has been seen as, you know, one of the key aspects of the first few use cases of metaverse has been the aspect of entertainment gaming, but we've also added a cultural element to it. In fact, we were the first metaverse to hoist the Indian national flag on 15th August to celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, where we had the virtual asset of the Red Fort, and we hoisted the Indian national flag at 9:01 a.m. on the 15th August. And that experience stays across through this year as we celebrate India's 75th independence year. We also provide for online shopping, but importantly here, we are not relying on the fact that we just need the cryptocurrency to be used. In fact, for India, we don't use any cryptocurrency interface, although we've got the capability to interface with other exchanges, but our platform feature is actually looking at a jurisdictional practice per country that we get into, where as per the local laws, we are able to abide with how the metaverse experience needs to be. And so in online shopping, we've provided for interface with conventional payment methods over here. And I look forward to have someday ability to provide for CBDC interfaces and people being able to use digital currencies, especially the e-rupee, on Kiya.ai. We also provide a very unique experience around real estate and landscapes, importantly, where we are able to bind the whole aspect of realtors coming and putting up their digital assets of buildings on as real estate, being able to be seen virtually, but also the capability to have NFTs that can register the proof of ownership for these assets, and importantly, being able to link this to real estate, if I were to say real assets, which is the property itself, and being able to go through the entire workflow for a mortgage processing, or in fact a personal loan for such aspects. Bharat Meta is our Indian metaverse. It's India's first indigenous metaverse. Provides for the whole aspect of immersive virtual environment to deliver financial services, real estate, shopping, public events and social engagement, and training and education. This is something we put up in early Jan as a closed user group testing. Today we've put up the aspect of culture and events on Bharat Meta, which on a Web 2.0 architecture at the moment. And we look to slowly move it to Web 3 architecture as and when the market demand changes and underlying systems are able to render the Web 3 architecture as well. So I'll leave you with a short video while we get on to the next part of the session.
Thank you, Rajesh. We had an immersive experience with that video, getting some online shopping done in Christmas time, and I think we have a long shopping list. But on a more serious note, I think we have a lot to discuss today about what metaverse is all about. I guess we have people in the audience who may actually be, I mean, if I may actually, on behalf of people who quote unquote are the uninitiated, right? Metaverse can be somewhat overwhelming, right? We're talking about immersive virtual worlds and augmented reality enabled avatars. It almost feels like you're in a science fiction movie. So maybe I'll ask Venki, if you can actually help share your own perspective about the metaverse, particularly for our banker audiences here.
Thanks, Ram. And, I think Rajesh's presentation was actually a great primer, what is the possibility. But most of the people on the call, maybe old fogies like me or, youngsters, but all of us typically are interacting with the next or next to next generation. And their fascination with gaming and the way they use the gaming world to spend their time is actually a great start to understanding metaverse. That's my view, and Rajesh can sort of explode on that, right? He mentioned that it's the Web 3.0's next sort of version. It sort of redefines IoT to mean something very different. It's Internet of Tomorrow. Metaverse, if you just look at it from a phonetic and word sort of etymology point of view, it just means beyond the universe. So, which means a virtual world. It's a world where we can interact with people, where we can transact with people, where we can evaluate multiple options of products and eventually buy. So it sort of brings in, it can potentially bring in multiple things, to the world in a virtual way. So you can walk into a mall, evaluate the products, pick up a product. Your bank then offers you multiple payment options. You choose one, and through your digital wallet or a token, you sort of evaluate the veracity of the product, provenance of the product, and then pay for it. So it's actually a real experience in a virtual world is what I would probably look at metaverse definition. I think the banking industry has seen several sort of changes in the last few years. Crypto, bitcoins, blockchain, ABCD of the banking world. AI, blockchain, data, cloud, and this is going to be the next big one. So banks have to prepare for it. In general, banks are take a breath, wait, and then sort of let's react kind of institutions. But I think here the demand for a virtual world of banking will be driven by the massive market which the Gen Z sort of provides. So I think we need to be prepared for it. So to my mind, metaverse is simple. It's a ability to do real business in a virtual world, bringing together multiple facets of the business elements. The product selection, the product purchase, the product payment, and the product settlement. So if you can bring all this together in a virtual world, which gives you a very realistic experience, it's great. So there are some retail vendors on the internet who give you the ability to test something out on your avatar. So you put up your photograph, they will tell you whether these spectacles work for you or not. Just imagine that in a 3D environment with the additional benefit of looking at it in the environment, sort of build in the environment as well. And then you build in the ability to choose, ability to pay, and ability to deliver that. I think that defines metaverse to me, Ram.
Lovely. Real experiences in the virtual world. Yeah, I think that summarizes, metaverse for anyone who's seeking to understand metaverse. Rajesh, I remember the first time we spoke about metaverse. You were quoting the reference of Neil Stephenson and the book Snow Crash, right? And you've also been referring that it is not a new term, boss. It's been in work for a while. And you've also been engaging with banks around the world, right? So, before we get into the what, why, how, and just talking about metaverse. So maybe you can tell us about metaverse in the banking context as you see it.
Yeah, I think, the reason I mentioned about the fact that metaverse evolved out of a novel is an important one because, then it gives the liberty to people, the innovative liberty to people to think about what they want out of the metaverse. Otherwise, you sometimes come across with constricted opinions of saying this is what is it, and you tend to sort of not get out of that element, and you're bound by so-called the standards and stick by that. But I think what the metaverse is able to provide is the aspect of a constructive and imaginative innovation, which is able to lend itself to create multiple opportunities, given the objectives being visualization and immersive experience, objective being open finance, and objective being able to provide banking as a service as such. And when you start imagining this across multiple vectors, you then come out with use cases. Per se, we've Kiya.ai has been one of the pioneers in extended reality solutions. We, in fact, I remember launched our first extended reality banking solution in 2019, November, on augmented reality at that time, and which was on HoloLens. And we found the power of that to be able to do customer onboarding using augmented reality. A time when the headset cost $3,500. Now it's way cheaper as a headset. But I think, and it's going to get cheaper as well. When I say cheaper, I think it is with regards to a balance of how immersive you want it to be, 360 degrees, 120 degrees, etc. But as things go along, immersiveness is going to be an important element. And the reason why I think that banks need to look at the metaverse per se seriously is the fact that when we look at how 5G is going to change the way people have availability of data. If Netflix can say you can download a movie in 4 seconds with 5G speeds of 500 Mbps to 600 Mbps, what do banks say? You can't say my mobile app will work faster, right? Nobody's going to click faster with 600 Mbps speed. it has to be something extra. And that aspect, I think, is the gradual way in which banks and customers will want to move to an immersive experience. The availability of the devices, etc., seems to be one of the constraints to be looking at metaverse adoptability. But how I look at metaverse for banking is the aspect of first bringing across immersiveness, being able to bring across some processes which are able to ease the transition for customers, and then eventually get to much more serious use cases like trade finance and marketplace, etc.
Very interesting. Constructive and imaginative. I think those are words that I think we'll carry from that comment of yours, Rajesh. But there is another way of looking at it, right? Which is the confluence of physical and digital reality. You're calling them as extended reality or augmented reality. And in fact, Vicky, I'll bring this back to you, right? I mean, when we talk about having a confluence of physical, digital realm in the next evolution of internet, and Rajesh rightly pointed out about 5G and what banks should do to harness the potential. In fact, ANZ has, you guys, I mean, I read recently about the world line payment solution and the hosting of the customer in the Decentraland metaverse. So you may want to give your thoughts on what banks should really do, basically to help harness the potential of metaverse and, let's say, the enhanced UX.
Sure. So firstly, a little bit about that world line and ANZ sort of bringing a customer into the virtual world. So it is essentially Worldline has got a showroom in Decentraland, and we bought one of our customers to actually display and sell their products there. It was actually a beverages company called Naked Life Beverages. Is a long-term ANZ customer. We sort of facilitated them to bring that in. So if you recall Rajesh's presentation, he spoke about learning and development as the first bit that banks do. The second one is bringing their customers' products and running a marketplace. I think he spoke about marketplace as well. I think is the one that banks have tried. So the simplest use that you can think of is you like to visit a branch. Though I wonder why anybody would want to visit a bank branch at all. But if you do want to have a personal interaction with, say, your relationship manager, today you do it over Teams or Zoom or phone or things like that. But that's one-on-one, and you actually don't experience the entire environment. Now, here is an ability to actually walk into a branch virtually, and then the RM then takes you and demonstrates the bank's products. The next level of that is not only the bank's product, but products that you need to buy through the banks, financing it. For example, Ram, you decide that this Christmas you're going to reward yourself with a luxury car, and you want to borrow money to buy that. Though I doubt whether you need to borrow at all. But assuming you do, and you walk into a bank and you say that I want to buy a luxury car, one of the restrictions in our physical world is that you need to visit showroom after showroom to do this, which may be spread across the city. You need to, experience the car there and then come back. Now, here is an option for you to actually experience all this virtually, and the bank simultaneously is able to tell you what are the provenance and the documentation related to that particular car. You can experience to feel the car in a much more real way than what you can do over pictures. And the bank then finances it for you, draws up the documentation in an NFT form, and there is a digital wallet that comes into play to pay that. So potentially that kind of a use case is where I think the first few transactions will get done. And then, as Rajesh told us that they are already prepared with it, I'm sure banks are looking to evaluate that as well. So you will see actions like this that are coming through, which will allow I think what it can potentially do is break the one barrier which allows you to today makes shopping a little difficult is you need to be physically there, and you need to be traveling across options. So it gives you the ability to shortlist, ability to complete the entire purchasing chain when you're wanting to buy something. And as Rajesh was going through, I was just thinking, in bad old days of banking, when it was very personal and people dependent, there is one activity in institutional banking which is called stock inspection and factory checks. those of us who have been in the lending business will understand that. And it's something that RMs don't want to do, but it needs to be done. You need to make sure that the security that the vendor, the borrower is providing is right. Here is an ability to bring that online, and you can probably forever keep watching at the factory, and you can do some close inspections of the factory without traveling. So that, I think, is a major use case. It will take time for that to come through, but that's one big thing. I think potentially banks can benefit. Similarly, if you look at one of the biggest business, and Rajesh briefly spoke about trade finances, is the whole act of receivable financing, or supply chain financing. So the ability to watch the supply chain virtually before you finance is a great thing for banks. So I think metaverse banking, which is essentially financial transactions in a virtual environment, opens up tremendous amount of ideas and thoughts. The most basic one is branch visit, but there are, I think, a lot more use cases that will come through as we speak, and it all means more customer choice, better customer experience, and this could well be the next future of for banking.
Lovely. Venki, actually, there were a couple of questions I'm seeing from people. Sriharan and Nitin have asked about use cases, applications, but I guess they've got more than their share of what they actually asked for. But I would still take the same question to you, Rajesh. And I think, when we spoke, you were talking about, use cases not being limited to retail, but also to the corporate institutional customers. If you want to pick one or two very important or interesting use cases likely to emerge, what would you pick?
Yes. So I'll just start with the prelude. I think, it's great to have someone like Venki on the panel, because you get use cases. Like I said, it's imagination and competence. So you can see so many use cases just being, coming out of a conversation. And that is something which, the metaverse is able to lend itself into if it's in the hands of a domain expert to sort of imagine. If you look at it around as technology, then it's very difficult to come out with solutions, because you only find hindrances of how you use the technology. But when you look at the business aspect, you then start getting into the constructive imagination. From a perspective of how I would see banks getting into the metaverse, I think it is important to know that if people would expect the metaverse to be the future of web, you would want to not restrict it to a 1990s view of just being a view of your products. Because in the 1990s, you had one homepage of a large company that would provide this, and you would then battle for pixel space on that and have your capabilities. I sort of link that to the amount of limited land that's there and someone putting up a lounge just for their product information. I think the expectations of technology purists or people who are consumers from the metaverse would be that is able to solve difficult use cases for the consumers and for banks. And that should be one of the goals of the first steps towards the metaverse. I know for a fact that we've been speaking to several banks. I did mention the word 19, with whom we are really on final talks of closed user group testing and moving that to a constructive sort of go live experience. But with the multiple banks that we've been talking globally, one of the important things that they mentioned is we have a problem in dealing with multiple jurisdictions. How can the metaverse sort that out? Because when you say metaverse, it has obviously the global outreach. With visible, with data visualization and with the immersive experience, you're able to then render that much more strongly, where you can probably sort of replace the need to necessarily have somebody on site all the time, especially when it comes to corporate banking and having meetings to undertake activities around trade finance. That was one important element. The other aspect is to use technologies to be able to conduct something like an onboarding. Today, when we look at the experience around digital banking for onboarding, it is around a mobile device, and it is restricted to one person. And typically, although I have seen some use cases of multiple users being able to be onboarded, but the fact is there's a lot of manual work in the backend to link stakeholders. The ability for a multi-user persistent environment like the metaverse allows for onboarding really to get resolved in a way where the bank is able to go through the entire gamification and make sure that while the work may not be a purely assisted workflow of onboarding, because of the ability for one to observe, it does become assisted onboarding in that perspective, which makes sure that the aspects of compliance are ticked. When we look at trade finance per se, you look at the aspect of how marketplace, like Venki mentioned, is an important component of trade finance in future, because people want the best deal. People want to know who are options out there and not just look at one vendor list that's with them. With that environment coming through, the metaverse is really going to provide the visualization to what was classically, I would say, a hindered way of using blockchain around trade finance, because the buyer seller were on these so-called internal apps which they need to view. The metaverse allows you to view that through a gamified process to say how the goods, what's this sale going to be of, what's the port of shipment, and how you integrate that. Now, Venki did mention IoT, and I think that is going to be a turning point for the metaverse, where 5G is one point that provides the visualization. But when you look at IoT and you look at these tags that you're able to put around, shipment of goods, etc., you will have the entire aspect of the blockchain, IoT, and metaverse through 5G all coming together to provide a very strong use case to say how trade finance globally can be monitored across. So it is, I would think, like, multiple use cases that are available for banks, especially not just restricted to retail, but multiple areas like corporate banking. And but one of the most undiscovered areas is how metaverse can enable banking as a service to companies, where every company can, sort of operate like a fintech, how to provide embedded finance, and make sure that if you look at the whole aspect of the growth in fintechs that has happened over the last few years for the good of banking, I would say, banks do feel about the fact that some of their core operations are being now outsourced to fintechs. The metaverse is an opportunity for banks to start taking a grasp about what their core processes they can hold on to and being able to render an enriched experience.
So this is actually now taking from what Venki referred as bad old days to potentially the good new days, metaverse enabled banking. Venki, I think there was a comment that was being made about, there was a reference about compliance that Rajesh talked about, right? He's saying that metaverse is expected to hit about 5 trillion, there's some estimation. Now, point is, there's also a lot of concerns, right? Privacy, security, biometric data, identity thefts, there's a lot of, let's say, concerns around it, right? But in spite of that, there is obviously, let's say, there is a compulsion or a compelling reason, I'm sure, which is why we are in this panel here and conversing. If you were to actually pick one reason why banks should embrace the metaverse, what would your answer be?
So let me share some numbers, and I must get this right? So Decentraland, which is one of the sort of marketplaces in metaverse, receives about 300,000 visitors in a month now. So early days, very early days, right? People have just figured out what that is, but it still has got about 300,000 visitors, and most of them, I assume, are the next generation youngsters, right? As a bank, you will be foolish to not participate in this, because this is the next level of customers that you're going to get, right? So you will ignore this group at your own peril. That's one. Similarly, you spoke about this 5 trillion business. JP Morgan has estimated that business opportunities for companies who are willing to operate in metaverse can generate over 1 trillion revenues annually. $1 trillion of revenue annually. Now these are staggering numbers, right? So no wonder that in the Accenture survey, 70% of bankers believe that virtual reality services will be a differentiator, right? So I think you get your answer. Your customers want it, your constituents want it. So why wouldn't you do it? So I think, and then the big bit about giving customers a uniquely differentiated experience is an ability to differentiate for banks, etc., is a possibility. And I think, Rajesh mentioned the 90s, where you kept your product close and you said, you buy my product, I'm the best. Here is a chance to actually open it up, allow the customers to pick and choose, and then get your share of the profit through the ancillary business that will come in. So I think this whole concept of metaverse is something that you will ignore only if you are not sort of, you're willing to let go of massive revenue opportunities. However, we also know that the hype is just beginning. So, we are at the very early stage of this hype. And like, blockchain, number of use cases, real valid use cases that I see in banking, which blockchain can work, we have not been able to find too many. There are bits and pieces here and there, but it's not a game changer. So banks will step in here, take the right, amount of, prudent measures and make sure that you're prepared. I think that's what banks will need to do. Be prepared to manage this. And that's where people like Kiya.ai can help and, Sherpa these banks through this journey. So you will not ignore this segment, but you will step in cautiously.
Ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not where they're meant to be, right?
That's
so,
right.
So you have to do something about it. Well, Rajesh, there's a very interesting question that Nikhil has. AR and VR is talked to the same breath, but between them, one is more likely to be adopted, yes or no, and if so, yes. But I want to pepper that more with something else, right? Metaverse banking in one perspective is a logical extension to open banking and API banking, right? And obviously, the moment we talk about API banking, it's really about the game is about interoperability. And there's also talking about interoperability with other metaverses, right? So we're talking about real experiences and virtual experiences in the virtual world from that standpoint. So if you were to actually, give your view on that, right? I mean, do you think that's likely to be the norm, and why would you say that?
So I think if we were to look at what open banking provides and then what else can happen on the metaverse, there's a good correlation between how open banking standards will drive the first revolution of the metaverse. What open banking provides is the aspect of resolving the element around challenges of data, being able to also provide data that can be interoperable, because it's an important element that you want a ubiquitous payment system or a ubiquitous banking environment to be able to then say, I will talk of opening this up on the metaverse. That open banking clearly renders. So I would see that as the bottom tier, so to say, that will drive the metaverse or any other future of web. It could evolve to be anything else in the next 3 to 5 years, but any future of web has to be around standards that render data that is usable across the virtual worlds. The next element is the whole aspect of interoperability, and that's where we put that as the upper layer. So in our architecture in Kiyaverse, we look at that as a meta API layer. What meta API provides, which open banking need not. Open banking provides the data, and this could not just be banks, but also corporates. And so I would look at it as open finance. But on the mid tier, you have meta APIs that allows for the ability to have interoperability between meta worlds, virtual worlds, meta spaces, whatever we eventually call them in the near future. So interoperability of building a so-called multiverse is what meta API provides. The next aspect is to look at around constrictions of how an avatar coming in from, let's say, another world into our world should be allowed, what actions they should be allowed to do, and things like that. And there are global standards that are coming out. You have IEEE standards for spatial computing, avatar movements, etc. And that is going to evolve with the capability to provide interoperability between metaverses. There is talk of Sandbox, Decentraland talking amongst themselves for that, Minecraft being part of it. I, for one, know that Sandbox has opened up, certain conversations with some of their core partners on how they can provide interoperability with other platforms. It's a very, I think, encouraging sort of initiative from the metaverse providers, because when we look at eventually what you call as the metaverse, it is going to be one metaverse, and it is going to be multiple providers that have decentralized data, decentralized experiences that can interchange avatars to be able to provide a seamless experience. And so the meta API would come in handy there. And the third part would be the IoT part, where we have the trillions of devices that will emerge over the next 5 to 10 years, which will be enabled to provide for mandates for transactions, various actions that are pre-configured on either smart contracts, etc. So that would be the API IoT layer. So that's how we look at in Kiya.ai as a component of 3 layers: open, finance, Meta API, and then IoT API.
This Meta API is a very important reference you made. And of course, IoT, trillions of devices coming on board. I think that maybe answers the question that Murali Krishnan had asked about what are the standards people are adopting. So I'll come back to you again, Venki. This is a world of virtual branches, virtual malls, digital money, but real economies, right? We're talking about real experiences in the virtual world. This transition, right, from real world to virtual avatars, how do you see this likely to be unfolding as we, traverse this journey going forward? Yeah.
See, one of the best part of these kind of technology sort of revolutions is that you just get pushed in. It's like getting into a train in Bombay, whether you like it or not, they will push you in and you'll push out, right? So I think it's a bit like that. So I think the transition will happen, particularly if you believe what people are predicting. I think Gartner said about quarter of the world's population will spend 1 hour a day by 2025 on the metaverse, which is 2 billion hours a day. I mean, that's a lot of time, and no business in the world is going to miss out on something like that, right? So I think the transition is inevitable. It will come in. It will come with a little bit of kicking and screaming from old industry like banks. Banks take time. Even if you see the adoption of by the banking world of what is currently available, it's at very elementary, high level stage. So I would teach you how to evaluate products on the metaverse. Here are, this is my virtual branch. Come in and do that. I don't think we have gone in where Rajesh is already sort of walking boldly. I think banks will take their time. So it is going to be a transition that will happen. That will be fueled by the customers demanding something much more, but it will take its time. Regulations have to start keep pacing with it. And I saw the question on what will regulations need to do. We have seen how quickly the bad elements in the online sort of world step in and and create damage to the environment. So that's only likely to increase with all this, right? So will we move from a KYC to KYA, know your avatar, kind of evaluation, which will need to be done? Avatars will need to be validated. And as you mentioned, several millions of new devices which come in, AR, VR sort of devices will have all will need to be validated. So I think there is a few steps that the banking industry will take, that the regulators will need to do before this comes through, but this transition will happen. So, the question is it one of those which will happen in a whoosh and, you realize that, today you were going to a mall, tomorrow you are operating virtual? My answer is no. But in the next 3 to 5 years, I think we can see some significant steps that will happen. But the regulators and the banks, cybersecurity fellows will have to keep pace with this. So transition will be there. I won't call it slow, but it will be measured and cautious.
Interesting. Rajesh, Venki just gave a new definition to Kiya. I mean, and if I add the word imagine, then it is know and imagine your avatar. That is Kiya.ai for you. Yeah. No, that was, I think what you're saying essentially, Venki, is that, this is more of a necessity, not an option, right? So, I love the Bombay train example, I guess. You just have to be there and you obviously get propelled. I know we are running short on time and we have just last 5 minutes, but before I open up for other questions from the audience, one last question to you, Rajesh. This is actually a bit of an oxymoron, right? We're talking about, real experiences in the virtual world. And we're talking about personalized interactions getting better with metaverse. I mean, it doesn't get more complex than that for the average layman to understand. It's a virtual world. We're talking about personalized experience. I mean, what would you like to say about how banks should engage with, be it customers, be it partners, be it employees, particularly with the fully digital native Gen Z, as we call it, right? So your take on that.
I think about, when I first looked at saying, will somebody be comfortable with using their avatar to do banking? I've got access to my office using my iCard all the time. I feel proud. I swipe it entering the office and then conduct my work. I swipe out and I've informed somebody that I've done 2 actions, right? Attended office and then left. What if I was able to then communicate through some way to say what else I'm doing and gamify that whole process through a persistent world, and that is auditable in terms of actions, and it provides whole gamification to my day. That is what an avatar is going to do. I log in using my avatar and then conduct banking or commerce or various aspects of social networking using that avatar. It is as good as, if I could trust the iCard to say that I am the person who walked in and it represents me. Why not have an avatar represent me? So that is my take on the aspect of somebody being suspicious about, is this really going to work, etc. I think it's going to provide freedom of expression, so to say, to be able to do much more. The other aspect I would say is that when we look at the aspect of how you look at metaverse per se, today in digital banking, you have, let's say, options of 3 questions asked for giving you a loan. And it's always that 4th question that gives you a sort of a negative experience of the digital banking. And in the metaverse, you are able to express that. You've got not just a hamburger menu or tiles restriction. You can then have multiple options. And I think from that perspective, for banks and every other firm that's on the metaverse, it allows them to offer online product design to their customers. Likewise, it allows for customers to provide online interactions that are more, engaging with the banks. So I think in those ways, I do see the metaverse evolving, and I think it's a very positive part in terms of how real it can get. So, for example, if I were to say that I have a digital asset of my property that I'm going to view with a builder, and standing on the 1st floor today in a sample flat in real, I'm not able to find out how it looked from the 42nd floor. But standing in the metaverse on that virtual asset of that building, if I'm able to see the elevation view of saying, what part of that jungle can I see actually when I am having my flat on the 42nd floor, being able to reimagine that aspect is going to be a very powerful experience when it comes to saying how real can the virtual world get. When you look at an experience, I'll just tell you, for example, let's say I would love to have a reunion of friends, right? What if I was to able to order a real coffee on the metaverse, but actually meet them virtually? I'm sitting at my house sipping coffee, but we are all in the same cafe having a reunion party. It would redefine the way social interactions happen. So there are so many use cases that you look at when you look at what metaverse can offer, especially when it comes to banking. The ability to visualize multi-bank relationships, the ability to see what processes are followed by them and what processes are followed by you as bank 1 and bank 2 is a very important element, because today it is constricted by the amount of codes that you have as messaging types between these 2 banks. The aspect of relationship is really not there. It's just those coded messages that are there. That will reopen the way business can be done. What if I could put on to let's say a fund transfer only, which was, let's say, a 10% credit on LC, the aspect I can also sell insurance to that client. No message is able to give me that today. The metaverse can do that. So I think, like Venki said, it's a huge opportunity that's there, and it's just up to saying what time it triggers to get, big, but it's important to be there to be able to be a part of that whole experience of growth. And I would think an exciting way in how people see the future of web.
Perfect. No, that was useful, Rajesh. So maybe we will have our audience share some thoughts on, and of course, also the panelists. We talked about the opportunities, right? What could be the biggest challenge for adoption of banking in the metaverse? Maybe this also answers a few questions that people have asked on Q&A. So let's see what the popular view on the biggest challenge for adoption is, right? Is it technology? Is it security concerns such as identity thefts? Or is it global and regional regulations? And you talked about how regulations are critical in this context as well, right? We'll give it another 30 seconds. I could see 46% of people have participated. Now it's 48. I think audience are waking up to or reflecting on the question. So I will close the poll now. And Well, so security concern and identity theft seems to be the biggest concern that at least what people in the audience have to say. I know we've run out of time, and I know we did promise to have a Q&A. So why don't I actually have the third question from a poll posed to our audience? So it is a Q&A, ladies and gentlemen, but the other way around. Now, this obviously is essentially let's say the essence of what we were discussing in all of our discussion today, right? What would you believe is the biggest financial institutions benefit that can be derived from banking in the metaverse? Would it be new streams of monetization? Would it be offering unique customer experiences? Or would it be better onboarding, be it on training or demos and so on and so forth, right? Seems to be I mean, these are election times in India as well, so I guess we have some neck-to-neck competitions here between monetization and experience, the way I see this here. So I'm closing the poll in 10 seconds. So maybe we should actually test our panelists on what their view is. They can't see what I'm seeing here. So what would your vote be for, Venki?
I would probably think it's the second option, Ram. My guess is that, just better customer experience, which will lead to the number one.
Okay, that's exit poll number one. And what is your exit poll, Rajesh? What would you pick?
So I think I'll go with what Venki said, because it's typically that unique experience that can then drive the monetization based on the adoption. Well,
I mean, you know our audiences, or our audiences know you well, by the ways, we all think alike. More than 53% of our audiences have to say that unique customer experiences is what stands out as the biggest benefit. Yeah. So on that note, I'm really feeling ashamed that we haven't had more time for this discussion. I mean, this was so involved, engaged. As Venki says, it's a real experience in quote unquote webinar virtual world that we all had. But really appreciate your time, gentlemen. And on behalf of the audience, may I take the opportunity to thank you for sharing your thoughts, perspectives, and more importantly, clarifying a lot of questions that all of us had. So have a wonderful day, gentlemen.